He was just 2 years old, and in the time it takes to turn around, he was gone. No cry, no sound, just silence. In the middle of the Idaho wilderness, a child disappeared, and not a single trace has ever been found. This isn't just a story about a missing child. It's a story about silence, a suspicion, and a secret buried deep in the Idaho wilderness. And the deeper you go, the more disturbing it becomes. Stay with me to the very end, because what you'll hear in the final moments changes everything. The Timber Creek Campground lies tucked deep in Lemhi County, Idaho, a rugged, isolated stretch of forest where pine trees stretch to the sky and dirt roads vanish into mountain valleys. It's the kind of place people go to get away from everything: cell service, noise, cities, crowds. On July 9, 2015, a small family made the drive from Idaho Falls to this quiet forest. It was meant to be a simple weekend getaway. Just two young parents, a grandfather and a friend. A break from everyday life. But by the next afternoon, one of them would be gone. Not a parent, not a camper, a child, a toddler. Dior Kunz Jr., just 2.5 years old, with big blue eyes and a soft blonde haircut, who loved toy trucks, snacks, and following his parents everywhere, was there one moment and missing the next. Dior Lucius Kunz Jr. was born in December 2012, the only child of Jessica Mitchell and Vernal Dior Kunz Sr. He was a healthy, happy little boy, full of personality, a little shy with strangers, but curious about the world. The kind of toddler who always wanted to be where the adults were, clutching a blanket, dragging around a toy, or babbling questions only his parents could understand. Those who knew him described him as bright and sweet. Jessica and Dior Sr. often said they took him everywhere, that he was attached at the hip. But on this trip, something went wrong. There were 5 people at the Timber Creek Campground that weekend. Dior Jr., 2 years old Jessica Mitchell, his mother Dior Kunz Sr., his father Robert Bob Walton, Jessica's grandfather Isaac Reinwand, a family friend, reportedly invited by Bob. They set up camp on Thursday evening. Nothing dramatic. Jessica said they had hot dogs and set up their sleeping arrangements. The plan was to relax, fish, and enjoy a quiet weekend in nature. The area they chose wasn't a formal campground with amenities. It was rough, unregulated terrain, more remote than most would choose with a toddler. But according to both parents, they felt safe. They didn't expect anything unusual. They had no idea how wrong they were. The next morning, Friday, started off like any other. Jessica and Dior Sr. said they got up, made breakfast, and played with Dior around the campfire. It was quiet, normal. At some point, they decided to take a drive down the dirt road to the stage stop in Leodore, a small convenience store, to buy snacks and supplies. Dior went with them. According to the parents, Dior was with them the whole time. They even claimed to have surveillance footage from the store showing him holding his little stuffed monkey, a toy he rarely let go. They returned to the campsite just after 1 p.m., and what happened over the next 20 minutes is where the story fractures. Jessica and Dior Sr. said they were preparing to go fishing. Bob Walton, Jessica's grandfather, was sitting in a chair at the campsite. The parents said Dior wanted to go with them to the nearby creek but then changed his mind. So they told him, "Okay, you stay with Grandpa." Then they walked away, down a small hill toward the creek. No more than 50 yards away, they claimed. Minutes later, they returned. Dior was gone. They asked Bob, "Where's Dior?" Bob replied, "I thought he went with you." And just like that, confusion turned to panic. The family fanned out. Jessica ran up and down the road. Dior searched the brush. Bob stayed at camp in case Dior came back. They screamed his name, scanned the creek, checked the truck. No sign. According to their account, the search lasted about an hour before they called 911 at 2:26 p.m. The dispatcher asked, "You can't find your son?" Jessica's voice came through the static. "We've been looking for him for over an hour, and we need help now." What followed was one of the most baffling and fruitless child searches in U.S. history. Within hours, local law enforcement and volunteer teams arrived. Dogs, ATVs, helicopters, divers, drones, aerial heat mapping. They scoured 2 square miles of forest. Every trail, ditch, and river bend. Dogs couldn't pick up Dior's scent. Helicopters saw nothing from above. Divers searched the nearby creek and pond. No clothing, no toys, no body. Nothing. Lemhi County Sheriff Lynn Bowerman told reporters, "It's like he vanished into thin air." As investigators pressed the family for more information, things didn't add up. Jessica and Dior Sr. gave inconsistent timelines. They said Dior was with them at the creek, then said he stayed with Bob. They said they saw Dior playing near the truck moments before he vanished, then said they thought he'd followed them. When asked to retrace their exact steps, they couldn't agree on how far they'd walked, who last saw Dior, or when they realized he was missing. And none of them could explain one central mystery. How does a 2-year-old vanish from a 5-person campsite without a sound? One of the earliest reported clues was Dior's stuffed monkey, the one he supposedly held in the store footage. The parents said it was missing. But later, it was reportedly found inside the truck, untouched. That detail disturbed investigators. If Dior never went far, why would he leave behind the one item he was never without? Unless he never had it that afternoon, or someone placed it there later. Timber Creek is isolated, surrounded by steep terrain, thick brush, and narrow trails. But it's not a place where a toddler could just walk off unnoticed for long. To the east, rocky ridges. To the west, thick forest. To the north, a steep drop into a river to the south, the only road out, and it's miles long. Searchers were adamant. If Dior had wandered, we would have found something. No footprints, no dragging, no fabric caught on a branch, nothing. A child's footsteps should leave something behind. But Dior left nothing. Not a whisper, not a trail, just a space where he used to be. By nightfall on July 10th, searchers lit up the woods with flashlights. Dior's parents stood in shock. Bob Walton sat silently by the fire. And the wilderness, vast and quiet, offered no answers. What began as a weekend escape had become a chilling mystery. And what happened that afternoon in the Idaho woods would be questioned for years to come. Something's not right here. That was the first impression of multiple searchers, just hours after Dior Kunz Jr. vanished. Because in cases like this, the first thing you usually find is a trail. But there was no trail. No evidence he'd gone anywhere at all. By the time Lemhi County deputies reached the Timber Creek campground on the afternoon of July 10, 2015, the sun was still high in the sky, and the area was already crawling with searchers, parents, volunteers, local fire crews. They were all scouring the forest. But one thing struck the sheriff's office immediately. The campsite wasn't that big, and the surrounding woods weren't impossible to navigate, especially for trained searchers. In fact, the sheriff later said, "If he'd wandered into the woods, we should have found him within an hour." And yet, nothing. Authorities pulled the 4 adults aside for questioning. Jessica Mitchell, mother Vernal Dior, Kunz Sr., father, Bob Walton, Jessica's grandfather, Isaac Reinwand, Bob's friend. They all said the same basic thing. We thought he was with someone else. But as the officers listened, something felt off. Jessica and Dior Sr. couldn't agree on the exact sequence of events. How far had they walked toward the creek? How long had they been gone? Who last saw Dior? Each version changed slightly with each telling. Jessica once said she could see Dior near the truck just minutes before they went to the creek. Dior Sr. said Dior had followed them, then turned back to stay with Grandpa. Bob Walton, the grandfather, insisted, "I never saw him come back. I thought he went with them." Isaac Reinwand, meanwhile, claimed he didn't really interact with Dior at all that day. The timelines didn't match, and neither did the tone. Jessica's 911 call, made around 2:26 p.m., was recorded and reviewed by multiple agencies. Her voice was high, frantic. She told the dispatcher they'd been searching for over an hour. But investigators noted that if Dior had truly gone missing just before 2 p.m., that didn't add up. What had they been doing during that hour? Why had no one from the group called sooner? And why didn't anyone flag down help from the highway, just a few miles away? Search teams brought in K9 units from the start, trained scent dogs who'd recovered missing children dozens of times. They gave the dogs Dior's scent. The dogs circled the campsite, wandered briefly, then stopped. No trail, no pull, no lead. One handler reportedly said, "It's like he was never here." Even in shallow water, the divers found no shoes, no fabric, no signs Dior had ever entered the stream. The official report from the Lemhi County Sheriff's Office would later state, "We believe Dior Kunz Jr. was not in that area when we arrived," which led to a terrifying new question. Had he ever really gone missing there at all? As the investigation unfolded over the next few days, inconsistencies became patterns. Jessica and Dior Sr. would give one version to police and another to the media. In one interview, Dior said, "We turned around and he was gone. I figured he was with Grandpa." In another, Jessica claimed, "He was by the truck. I told him to stay there, and I walked 50 feet away." Even the smallest details, like Dior's clothing or whether he had his toy monkey, would shift. Then came the polygraphs. Investigators asked the parents to take polygraph tests, and both reportedly failed. While polygraph results aren't admissible in court, they raised even more concern for the sheriff's team. Jessica later said she was too emotional to pass. Dior claimed he was being set up. The sheriff wasn't convinced. He made a public statement. "We don't believe the parents are telling us everything they know." At first, the public sympathized with Jessica and Dior, two young parents who just lost their child. Their faces appeared in every local newspaper and on national TV. But the more they spoke, the more viewers noticed cracks in their story. A few examples. Jessica claimed Dior had been holding her hand. Then she said she didn't remember when she last saw him. Dior told one outlet Dior had been playing in the dirt. Another time, he said he was at the creek. They both described a 10-minute gap. But some timelines suggest closer to 45 minutes unaccounted for. And the biggest red flag? No one, not even the family friend Isaac, actually remembered seeing Dior that day. Only Jessica and Dior claimed they did. Isaac Reenwan, the quiet friend of Grandpa Bob, was one of the last people to see the family before Dior disappeared. But his statements were vague. He told police he didn't see Dior at all that day, didn't interact with him, didn't notice him around the truck or campfire. Investigators found this odd. If Dior was there that morning, eating snacks, playing in the dirt, pointing at the fire, why didn't anyone remember it except his parents? Reenwan was questioned multiple times, but nothing linked him to a crime. Still, his presence added to the confusion, because the picture being painted now wasn't one of a child running off, but of a child who might not have been there to begin with. The area near the campsite was rough terrain, but not impossible. Some theorized that Dior had simply fallen into the nearby creek and drowned. But searchers combed every inch of water, boats, divers, even sonar equipment. And still, nothing. Not a single shoe, not a sock, not a trace. The accidental drowning theory began to fall apart. If he had drowned, there would be something. Instead, there was nothing. As the case dragged into late summer, the parents stopped giving interviews. They hired a lawyer. They turned away from media appearances. They stopped cooperating fully with investigators. And just like that, the story fell quiet. No arrests, no confession, no body. And a 2-year-old boy's face slowly faded from the headlines. In the first 48 hours of a missing child case, every detail matters. Every hour counts. But here the story wasn't just falling apart, it was rewiring itself, changing, evolving, like it was being rewritten from memory, not truth. By now, Dior Kunz Jr. had been missing for days, and the one thing becoming clearer was that no one really knew what happened, or maybe someone did, and they just weren't saying. In the first few days, you tell yourself it's temporary, that he'll be found, that maybe he wandered too far or is hiding behind a tree. But when the days stretch into weeks, and weeks stretch into months, something else takes over. Not hope, not grief, something colder, and something far harder to live with. By late July, 3 weeks after Dior Kunz Jr. disappeared from the Timber Creek campground, the initial search had already turned up nothing. No remains, no clothing, no scent trail, nothing. Despite hundreds of trained searchers, helicopters, scent-tracking dogs, divers, drones, and satellite support, the forest stayed silent. And as the search effort slowed, the focus shifted. Not toward the mountains, but back toward the people who were supposed to be watching him. Desperate for answers and frustrated by law enforcement, Jessica and Dior Sr. did what many grieving families do. They brought in outside help. Enter Philip Klein, a Texas-based private investigator known for taking on high-profile missing person cases. Klein agreed to take the case pro bono. He traveled to Idaho, reviewed reports, retraced the timeline, interviewed the parents, and then made headlines of his own. Klein's conclusion: the parents know more than they're saying. And more than that, I do not believe this was a stranger abduction. I believe something happened at that campsite, and I believe the truth is being withheld. Klein's investigation raised new red flags. No verified sightings of Dior at the Timber Creek campground, aside from the parents' claims. Bob Walton, the grandfather, reportedly had health issues that made him slow-moving and nearly blind in one eye. He was not capable of closely supervising a toddler. Isaac Reinwand, the friend, remained vague and unhelpful in interviews. Jessica and Dior Sr. gave Klein several versions of the same story, even contradicting themselves within minutes. Klein became more vocal. They were evasive. They withheld details. They lied to us. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a tragedy. This was a cover-up. But when Klein confronted them, they fired him. Jessica and Dior ended the contract and publicly accused him of lying for fame. The drama only made things worse, because by now, public support was starting to erode. At first, the media treated the parents with sympathy, but after the PI's press conference and the sheriff's statements, the tone shifted. Comment sections filled with anger. Facebook groups launched into full investigations. True crime forums began dissecting every word, every pause, every contradiction in Jessica and Dior's interviews. Then came the theories, and they were brutal. Some believed an accident occurred at the campsite, that Dior had fallen or gotten hurt and the family panicked. Others speculated about neglect or worse, a violent act covered up. And the most chilling theory of all? That Dior never made it to the campsite at all. That the trip was a smokescreen, to explain a disappearance that had happened somewhere else. Meanwhile, as investigators clashed with the family and media ran loops of the last known footage of Dior holding his stuffed monkey, the one toy he reportedly never let go, something more subtle happened. The human weight of the case started to wear through. A 2-year-old boy doesn't just disappear. He doesn't climb rocks. He doesn't hide for days. He doesn't erase himself from the world. So where was he? The silence wasn't just heartbreaking, it was offensive, because every day that passed without an answer felt like an insult to the truth. By late 2015, 5 months after Dior's disappearance, the sheriff's department officially named both parents persons of interest. No arrests, no charges, but the damage was done. We do not believe this was an animal attack. We do not believe Dior was abducted by a stranger. We believe someone at that campsite knows what happened. Sheriff Lynn Bowerman. When asked if the parents were cooperating, he said, "No, not anymore." Jessica and Dior Sr. lawyered up. They refused polygraphs. They stopped interviews. They moved away from Idaho. And just like that, The search stopped being about finding a lost boy. It became about finding the truth. As the case grew cold, all that was left were theories, but none of them explained everything. Dior wandered too close to the creek or a steep drop. An accident happened. Out of fear, the parents or group covered it up, staged a disappearance. Problem: there was no blood, no torn clothing, no drag marks, no remains. A bear or mountain lion took Dior. Problem: wildlife experts and trackers found no signs of predation. Dior's clothing, if torn off, would have surfaced. No drag marks, no scattered remains, no blood. Someone passed through the area, saw Dior briefly left alone, and took him. Problem: the road is remote. Campsites are sparse. The timeline was short. No witnesses, no tire tracks, no one unaccounted for. Dior was already missing before the trip. The camping story was a setup to create a believable disappearance. Problem: hard to prove. No forensics ever tied Dior to the campsite, but surveillance footage showed him alive just hours before. Each theory circles the same truth. Something happened. But no one, not even the professionals, can agree on what. Bob Walton, Jessica's grandfather, was the last known adult watching Dior before he vanished. He never gave a public interview. He never said much. According to reports, he struggled with memory, vision, and health problems. To some, he was a grieving great-grandfather. To others, a convenient blind spot. Did he truly never see Dior, or did he, like everyone else, choose silence? We may never know. In 2016, 2017, 2018, the case remained open, but no arrests were made. Search teams returned to the area 5 times. Each time they brought new tools: ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, specialized divers, and each time they left with the same result: nothing. At one point, bones were found in the forest. They sparked national attention. News outlets rushed to report possible remains of missing toddler found in Idaho. But DNA testing confirmed the remains were not Dior's. It was another false alarm, another dagger to the heart, another reset of hope. Jessica and Dior eventually split. Their relationship didn't survive the weight of public scrutiny and private suspicion. They stopped speaking. Each blamed the other. Each insisted they didn't know what happened. But neither could give answers. The last known public statement from Jessica came years later. "I know people think we're guilty, but I didn't hurt my son. And I'll take that to my grave." Dior, in his last interview, said, "I'm not perfect, but I loved my son. I still do." Some stories aren't meant to be forgotten. They echo across ridges. They settle in the silence between pine trees. And they ask again and again, where is Dior Kunz Jr.? 10 years old now. Had he lived, he would have started school, joined sports, worn a backpack, blown out birthday candles. But instead, there is only a hole where a child used to be, a space in the world left unfilled, and a forest that holds its secrets tightly. You'd think that time would dull the sharp edge of tragedy. But in this case, time did the opposite. Because the longer the answers take to come, the louder the questions get. It's been nearly a decade since the boy with the blue eyes and stuffed monkey vanished from the Timber Creek campground. And still, not a single confirmed trace of Dior Kunz Jr. has ever been found. No bone fragments, no clothing, no toys, no footprints, no answers, only a space where a child once stood. And a mystery that feels as heavy now as it did in 2015. In most missing child cases, time clarifies. Bodies are recovered, confessions surface. Innocent explanations rise from the fog. But not here. In Dior's case, time only thickened the fog. And when logic failed, the human mind filled the gaps with theories. Some rational, some haunting. Let's go through them, not as facts, but as the possibilities that still haunt this story. The most basic theory is that Dior slipped into the water, into the brush, down a slope. He fell, died. Nature did the rest. But investigators and wildlife experts return to the same question. Where is the evidence? No torn fabric, no blood, No scent trail, no remains, no drag marks, no body washed downstream. Dogs trained to detect even minute traces of human scent found nothing. If Dior had fallen into that creek, he should have been found within hours. And yet, he wasn't. A mountain lion. A bear. A predator lurking in the trees. It's a terrifying but natural possibility in the Idaho wilderness. And yet, unlikely. Searchers found no signs of a struggle, no torn clothing, no blood spray, no paw prints or drag marks. One investigator said, "A mountain lion doesn't eat clean. You would have seen it." The way Dior vanished was silent, clean, instant. That's not how nature works. Some believe a stranger passed through the area, saw an opportunity, and took Dior. There were logging roads nearby. There were occasional campers. It's not impossible. But again, problems emerge. The timeline was extremely short. There was no one seen nearby. No tire tracks. No one unaccounted for. No ransom. No sightings. If this was an abduction, it was instant, silent, and perfectly executed. Too perfect. This is the darkest theory. The one few want to believe, but many keep returning to. That Dior never made it to Timber Creek at all. That something happened to him before the trip and the disappearance was staged. The theory goes like this. The parents go on a camping trip with Bob Walton and Isaac Reinwand. They claim Dior is with them. They say he disappeared. But he was already gone. Problem is, that's nearly impossible to prove. There is surveillance footage of Dior at a convenience store the day before. He's seen with his parents, holding his monkey. So if something happened to him, it would have had to be during the trip, not before it. Still, no one, not even law enforcement, can confirm anyone outside the group ever saw Dior at the campground. Only the 5 people involved claim he was there. That fact alone keeps this theory alive. One person who remained a ghost in this story is Bob Walton, Jessica's grandfather, the man who was supposed to be watching Dior when he vanished. He was elderly, sickly, losing his eyesight, barely able to walk without support, and yet he was trusted to supervise a 2-year-old in the wilderness. Bob gave minimal statements to police. He never spoke to the media. He died a few years later, taking whatever he knew with him. Did he see something? Did he know more? Or did he simply fall asleep and wake to silence? As time passed, something else began to unravel. Jessica and Dior Sr. started blaming each other. In leaked emails, recorded phone calls, and court documents, they pointed fingers. Said the other was lying. Said they had been manipulated. It was no longer a united front. It was a broken story told in 2 voices. In one interview, Jessica said, "I don't trust anyone anymore, not even him." Dior, in turn, accused Jessica of changing her story to the police. The fracture didn't help their case, and it didn't help Dior, because while they fought over details, he was still missing. Private investigator Philip Klein eventually left the case, not because he lost interest, but because he said the parents refused to cooperate. In his final public report, he said, "There are 4 people who went up that mountain, 3 came down, and one of them knows exactly what happened." He also said Dior's case wasn't a mystery, just a secret that no one had the courage to break. That quote still circulates today. The Lemhi County Sheriff's Office says the case remains open. It's officially classified as a missing person, but investigators privately admit this is a suspicious disappearance. In 2019, law enforcement returned to the campsite again, with cadaver dogs. No evidence was found. Still, not a single piece. Jessica and Dior Sr. eventually split for good. Both moved away from Idaho. They do not speak publicly anymore. The heartbreak is obvious, but so is the secrecy. Their lives were consumed by something no one could fully understand, and neither of them could explain. Dior's face still appears on missing person posters, but the calls stopped coming. The reporters moved on. The world forgot. Except for the people who can't forget. There's something deeply unsettling about the fact that this story has no resolution. It plays out like fiction. Too clean, too eerie. A child disappears without a trace under the eyes of 4 adults. A search yields nothing. A PI is fired. The stories change. No charges are filed, and the boy is never found. It's a story that leaves you empty, but it also leaves you suspicious, because even if you don't know what happened, you know something did. Some mysteries are complex, others are confusing, but this one is cruel, because it dangles just enough truth to feel real, while hiding just enough to stay unsolved. This isn't just about a missing child. It's about a silence that's lasted almost 10 years. It's about people who claim to be heartbroken, but refuse to answer questions. It's about a story that doesn't make sense, because maybe it wasn't supposed to. And in the end, the question that won't die isn't just where is Dior? It's who's keeping the secret. Not every story ends. Some just stop. Like a voice cut short mid-sentence, like a child's laughter suddenly swallowed by the wind. And what's left behind is a silence that isn't peaceful. It's accusing. As the calendar turned, Dior's face aged only through FBI-generated images, computer guesses of what he might look like at age 5. Then 7, now nearly 12. But in the real world, nothing changed. The case sits open. Technically active, but cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Not from weather, but from waiting. No body, no confession, no new leads, just grief. And the ghost of a little boy, still hiding somewhere in the shadows of the Timber Creek wilderness, or the secrets of those who were there. The strangest part about time is this. It doesn't fix what was never broken. It only exposes what never added up. In the Dior Kunz case, every passing year has only highlighted what's missing. The exact timeline. Clear eyewitness accounts, physical evidence of any kind. A single consistent story, instead of answers. We've gotten more confusion, more contradictions, more silence. And while silence can be tragic, in this story, it feels like a weapon. Years after the initial investigation, Sheriff Lynn Bowerman still held firm in his view. We believe Dior is no longer alive, and we believe someone at that campsite knows what happened. He stopped short of naming a suspect, but the subtext was clear. The case didn't die in the forest. It was killed in the aftermath, buried under excuses, half-truths, and vanished cooperation. And without someone choosing to speak, that's where it will stay. There's a certain kind of pain that only the families of missing children understand. It's not closure. It's not grief. It's not even hope. It's limbo. A constant cycle of imagining. What if he's alive? What if he's not? What if he's being held somewhere? What if he just walked too far, and it was all an accident? It's a pain that rewrites birthdays as memorials. That turns a child's room into a shrine. That makes every headline a threat, every phone call a possible miracle. And that's what the Kunz and Mitchell families have lived with for nearly a decade. A pain with no edge, and no end. There's a detail in this case that haunts people, and it's small but unforgettable. Dior's stuffed monkey, the toy he reportedly carried everywhere, even into bed, was later found in the back seat of the truck. Clean, dry, undisturbed. But if Dior had wandered off from the camp, if he had cried, if he had been scared, wouldn't he have taken his monkey? Or had it already been left there, because he never needed it again? The image of that toy, sitting quietly in a parked truck untouched, is more terrifying than any theory. Because sometimes the scariest things aren't screams, they're absences. You can go to Timber Creek today. The fire pit's still there. The trees still creak in the wind. The creek still trickles beside the camp. But now it feels different. People who visit say there's a stillness in the air, a heaviness, like the ground knows what happened but can't say it, because nature doesn't lie, Only people do. There were 5 people in that story. 4 of them drove home, 1 didn't, and maybe only one of them knows exactly why. What happened to Dior Kunz Jr. may never be proven in a courtroom, but some truths don't need a conviction to be real. They just need one person to speak, and someone still hasn't. Even as media coverage faded and the headlines moved on, people across the country haven't let this case go. There are YouTube channels, podcasts, Reddit threads, Facebook groups, thousands of people asking the same question: where is Dior? Because even without evidence, the absence is overwhelming. Even without charges, the inconsistencies are alarming. Even without a body, the pain is real. This isn't the kind of story that wraps up neatly. It doesn't give you justice, it doesn't give you peace, but it gives you something else, a responsibility. Because stories like Dior's don't survive in headlines, they survive in memory, in retelling, in persistence. So maybe you're just a viewer. Maybe you're just hearing this case for the first time, but maybe you're the one who knows someone who was there, or knows someone who heard something, or knows how to make noise where others fell silent. Because someone somewhere knows what happened to Dior, and every day they stay quiet is another day he stays lost. He was just 2 years old, a child whose entire world was his mother, his father, his monkey toy, and the trees that surrounded their campsite. And in a single moment, he was gone. No trace, no goodbye, just silence. Dior Kunz Jr. should have started school. He should have learned to ride a bike. He should have blown out birthday candles surrounded by the people who claimed to love him. But instead, he became a question no one wants to answer. If someone told the truth, just one person, we might have had a different ending. But that didn't happen, and the silence grew louder than the facts. Do you know something about Dior's disappearance? Contact the Lemhi County Sheriff's Office, 208-756-8980. If you believe in justice, speak. If you care about truth, share. And if this story moved you, don't let it fade. Because missing children deserve more than headlines. They deserve to be found. If you want to hear more real unsolved cases, the ones that still echo through time, subscribe to Concealed Story Room, and help us bring light to the stories left in the dark.